When you think of heavy metal, you think of power, distortion, and dark, grinding riffs. And when you trace that back to its roots, it leads to one man, Tony Iommi, guitarist and founding member of Black Sabbath. But the sound that would define metal wasn't born out of aggression, it was born out of necessity. Because Tony Iommi, the man responsible for some of the heaviest riffs in music history, plays guitar with prosthetic fingertips on his fretting hand. The story begins in Birmingham, England in the 1960s. As a teenager, Iommi was working in a sheet metal factory, already dreaming of music, but not yet a full-time musician. On what was supposed to be the last day of his job, he had a gig lined up later that night. On that day, his hand got caught in an industrial press. He lost the tips of his middle and ring fingers on his right hand, which, as a left-handed guitarist, was his fretting hand. The injury was absolutely devastating. Doctors told him he'd never play guitar again, and for a while he believed them. But during his recovery, the foreman from the factory gave him a record by Django Reinhardt, the legendary jazz guitarist who only had 2 functional fingers on his fretting hand. Inspired, Iommi decided he wasn't done with the guitar, he just needed to find a way to adapt. So, he got creative. Using melted plastic from a detergent bottle, Iommi crafted homemade prosthetic tips for his injured fingers. He glued bits of leather onto them to get a better grip and reduce the pain. But they weren't perfect, and they didn't restore his full dexterity, but they let him press the strings enough to play again. But there was still a problem. Bending thick guitar strings with prosthetic fingertips hurts like crazy. To make things easier, Iommi began using lighter gauge strings and tuning his guitar down, a full step or more. This lower tuning reduced the tension and made the strings easier to manipulate, and in the process created a darker, heavier sound that became the blueprint for his metalwork. The irony is striking. The sound of Black Sabbath, the raw, sludgy, and ominous, wasn't engineered to be menacing, it was engineered to actually be playable. But that change, born from injury, became iconic. Without Iommi's accident, there's a real chance metal wouldn't sound like metal. Today, Iommi's riffs on tracks like Iron Man, War Pigs, and Children of the Grave are considered sacred texts in the metal genre. His technique may have been shaped by limitations, but it never held him back. Instead, it forced him to invent something completely new. Tony Iommi didn't just overcome adversity, he forged an entire genre from it, and he did it with plastic fingertips. His story is more than a tale of resilience, it's proof that sometimes the heaviest sounds come from the hardest struggles, and that innovation often begins where limitation starts.